I watch 10 hours of video game content, so you don't have to. Let's talk. What up, viewers? What up? What up? Calc Soups here, and today is Friday, June 16th. Forget which month it is, and that means it's time for a quick recap of the week in video game news. This is full bore E3 week, so there was a lot of content to get through. I'm gonna jump through it, but take everything I say with a grain of salt. There was hundreds of games kind of talked about or announced this week, and I'm only gonna talk about half dozen or so per showcase. There's a lot of content to go through. I think several of the big showcases were like 2-3 hours long, which is why I was saying, roughly like 10 hours worth. The Xbox showcase was 2 hours, or was an hour plus 45 minutes of Starfield specifically. The PC Gamer Show was 2 hours. The Future Game Show was like 2 hours. So it seems that Jeff Keighley isn't the only person who can put on a 2-hour presentation. So yeah, there's quite a lot to get through. I'll be starting with the Xbox showcase plus a little breakdown of Starfield that was at the end. So they started off really strong for me because I could definitely tell by the vibes that it was, they talked a lot about Fable. So they kind of did their, this was kind of the new trailer for Fable. Last thing we saw was just kind of like a teaser. There was like a 15-second teaser for Fable, and that was like, I think over a year ago. So good to see that. We didn't see any gameplay or anything like that. So we just got a kind of introduction to the characters and what the kind of vibe will be. And so that seems like it's a little further out. There was no date given, so I don't think it's going to be next year's kind of game. So I think a lot of people are estimating that at 2025, but it looks like it's got the vibes right, and I'm looking forward to playing that. The next game that was talked about and that I was interested in was called South of Midnight, and it's got really good vibes. It had kind of this old man playing a banjo, really cool kind of vibes to it, which is something you could probably say about Compulsion's last game, We Happy Few. This next game, South of Midnight, is from Compulsion Games, who made We Happy Few, which also had really good vibes. So really looking forward to what they do with South of Midnight. Looks like you're like some kind of monster hunter down in the bayou, so it looked pretty cool. We got to see Avowed. Avowed, I think a lot of the people that I saw kind of reacting to it from the gameplay that we saw. It was first person, but it looked like it kind of felt a little bit Elder Scrolls-esque, kind of first person fantasy, a lot of magic going on. Some of the people I saw described it as like high resolution Sea of Thieves, which I could kind of get. Sea of Thieves has a very round art style, whereas this is a little bit more realistic, I guess, but just a little bit higher res, I guess, a little maybe darker and muted. So yeah, that's Avowed. I believe it's coming out in 2024. I think that looked like a fun game. I'm very curious kind of how this one breaks out of the Sea of Thieves, Elder Scrolls kind of vein. So curious to see what goes on with that. I was very excited when I saw the lead actress presenting Hellblade 2. I'm very excited for Hellblade 2, Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2. Very excited for that game. I loved it. I was listening to the showcase with my headphones on, and just kind of hearing the voices in my head just instantly transported me back to Hellblade 1. So great game. I'm looking forward to playing it. I would have hoped that it was coming out this year, but I guess I'll see more when it comes out next year. Hopefully around August timeframe. That's when the first Hellblade came out. So hopefully I don't have to wait till holiday of next year or something like that. Didn't quite know what to make of Juicent, if I'm even saying that right. That's the latest title coming from Don't Nod, the company behind, or the developers behind Life is Strange. So it had a weird name. I don't quite remember what the gameplay was. It looked like a little bit more actiony, not a story-driven, narrative, choice-based game that we would expect from the developers of Life is Strange. So it looked a little bit more actiony. So looking forward to that. And then last but not least, Clockwork Revolution, that was In Exile, making their version of what looks like BioShock Infinite. You're like in a sky city with a kind of retro-futuristic, steampunky vibe, maybe a little bit more timey-wimey, stuff going on there. A lot of people just immediately said BioShock Infinite, which I'm there. Loved BioShock Infinite, as I love all of the BioShock games. And I don't think that's a bad game to be kind of mimicking. So maybe with a little bit more focus. It actually almost felt like I forgot what the Daisy something was the revolutionary in BioShock Infinite, and looking forward to seeing. It kind of almost exactly felt like it was telling her story. So yeah, I'm very curious to see what they do with Clockwork Revolution. And then the last 45 minutes of the Xbox showcase was specifically the Starfield Direct. I guess technically they're separate things. And we got a lot of information about what's going on in Starfield. They brought up the fact that they have 1,000 planets, which you should probably have to take a drink every time Starfield or Todd Howard mentions 1,000 planets. You might be dead by the end of the direct, but a lot of planet diversity, not the pentillion or whatever that No Man's Sky boasted, but it sounds like these were kind of more cultivated, and you have more of a specific experience checking out all these planets, including Alpha Centauri, and maybe you can go back to Earth or what's left of Earth or even our own solar system. So curious what they do with that. They described it as kind of NASA punk, which I thought was a really cool kind of vibe check on like what you should be expecting from Starfield. Is it's like very kind of ergonomic, very practical. You're in kind of big puffy suits like you would expect modern day or even slightly older day astronauts to be wearing. They went through shipbuilding and how complicated that can be, and how you'd be buying and piecing together different stuff, and what each room that you tack on different modules, different engines, and all that kind of stuff that'll all kind of build towards your ship, including ship combat and interactions with aliens and all that kind of stuff. Speaking of interactions with aliens, they talked about traits and all the different traits you can take, and how they'll just, often they'll have a benefit and a negative, which kind of feels like what was introduced in Outer Worlds, where you'd kind of get a trait and there would be a positive and negative associated with it. And these traits will come up randomly throughout it. So maybe even kind of like cyberpunky, where you never know where your background's gonna come into play, but it could be anywhere. So the traits kind of seem like really deep, but kind of really reminded me of Outer Worlds. And speaking of, I brought up both Outer Worlds and No Man's Sky. I'm curious what kind of deviates this from both of those games. I mean, I've played both of those games and enjoyed my time with Outer Worlds, so I feel like this is kind of living in that shadow. Same with like No Man's Sky, where there's a lot of exploration, so I'm kind of curious if this is just a merger of the two. Is that enough to make it kind of the big spectacle that it needs to be? Obviously, it'll have the kind of Bethesda charm and feel to it. But I think it's living a little bit in the shadow of both of those games. So I'm very curious. I'm not, coming out the gate saying 10 out of 10 or anything like that. So very curious what it does to kind of differentiate that, other than like that little bit of zhuzh X factor that a Bethesda game has. So, but this definitely feels like a Fallout in space that we would all kind of wanted from them for a long time, and taking Fallout to the nth degree of exploring planets and interacting with gathering resources, building up bases. It sounds like you can kind of develop into any direction you want, and probably have fun doing that. Problem I'm gonna probably have with the game is, not that I'm getting too ahead of myself, but like anytime there's too much to do, you're probably gonna lose track of like an overall narrative, which I assume there's gonna be like a golden path for the game, as there usually is with most games. And how are they going to kind of keep me pulling back on that kind of golden path? So something I've kind of turned against on like these big open world games is, if you give me access to too much at any one time, I'm going to fall off the golden path and not ever be able to find my way back to it. And I'm just going to be like, well, the narrative wasn't good because it wasn't a very through line or anything like that. So yeah, I hope they don't run into that issue. But looking forward to Starfield. It looks like a stellar game, and a lot of time and love went into it. And I'm still and always will be a huge Bethesda fan. So curious how they can kind of bring Fallout to space, like I said. So looking forward to that. But that's all. Those were the ones that caught my eye. Obviously, there was a lot more stuff shown off the Xbox showcase. And if you want to watch it all yourself, I'll have a link down below in the description. Moving back in time a little bit, the PC Gamer Show, I believe, was on Sunday. I'd watched these kind of out of order and all in one morning, so spent a lot of time on this. But there was a lot shown off in the PC Gamer Showcase that I was looking forward to. The top 5 or so that I had were Frostpunk 2. Frostpunk 1 did very well and had a lot of really good vibes. Really good city builder, but like very kind of grim, dark post-apocalypse. So looking forward to what they do with Frostpunk 2 and how they kind of raise the bar. Because Frostpunk, I think, definitely did raise the bar as far as city builders and kind of living in a world and establishing all that. So curious what they do with Frostpunk. The Age of Sigmar real-time strategy game that we talked about a while back. We got to see a little bit more of what gameplay will be like. I don't think there's a base building part of this like real-time strategy game. So I'm very curious kind of how I get units and what determines what units I bring into each of the battles. And then it was like a lot of really like capturing points. So I wonder if it feels very much like the tabletop game where you're like trying to capture points and earn victory points to kind of win the battle, I guess. Yeah, very curious what's going on there, but looked really cool. And as always, you got your Age of Sigmar kind of, I forget what the faction's called, versus the orcs, like the human Sigmarian knights or whatever, versus the orcs, had all that kind of flavor in there as well. Got to see a little bit more of the Pathfinder ARPG that's coming out. Looks like it's going to be maybe less ARPG and more, I guess, I don't know what you call Vampire Survivor, kind of idle shooter kind of game going for it. So, yeah, that's what Pathfinder Gallowspire looks like. It's really taking in the Vampire Survivor aspect, but it's going to be multiplayer, which is definitely a way to elevate Vampire Survivor, is make it multiplayer. And so you can run around as a wizard or an archer or a fighter and be running around collecting stuff and be doing all that stuff together. So definitely an evolution on the chasing the Vampire Survivor trend. So yeah, definitely a way to raise that up. And I wonder if that's still in Kickstarter. I know the Kickstarter was coming out or was active at some point. So very curious if that one's still on Kickstarter and what's that up to. Last but not least for the PC Gamer Show was Fabledom. I love the kind of fantasy feel of this city builder. And I've been saying, a lot of city builders I really enjoy. I'm looking forward to more and more. And just I really like playing in that space and building up cities and kind of making everything efficient. So this one's got a really cool like fantasy twist to it and very storybook fantasy. So looking forward to that one as well. But let me know if there's any other games at the PC Game Show that I missed that you think I should have talked about. Looking forward to that. Next, we had the Ubisoft Forward, which I believe was on Tuesday. Again, my whole week's all screwed up because I watched these all out of order. First thing that Ubisoft did was not take 2 hours to get through all their content. We'd already seen some of their content as well in other shows, so they kind of buried the lead a little bit. But the first thing they talked about was the Avatar game. Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, I believe is the name. I believe this is the first time we got a date. It's coming out December 7th of this year, so probably the last big game to come out this year. Pretty popular time for Callisto Protocol or Cyberpunk, so December is not the death knell for the year that most gaming studios or developers kind of used to think of it as. But yeah, I think what I saw was anybody who got kind of hands-on said it felt very like Far Cry-esque, which I could definitely see. Kind of learning from that team and putting together this kind of, you're running around as an avatar, you can use either guns or bows to kind of take out the entrenched people and slowly have, Pandora recover from these kind of invaders. So yeah, I could see how that would feel very Avatar-esque. I don't know if it'll go full, like, climbing towers and unlocking the map or anything like that. But yeah, I definitely liked kind of the vibes it was doing, and having watched both of the Avatar movies recently, really got me kind of hyped to play an Avatar game. We talked about Prince of Persia a couple weeks ago at the PlayStation showcase. The next Prince of Persia game looks pretty cool. Again, that kind of 2D boss fighty action RPG kind of game looked really fun. So we got to see just a little bit more of that and get a little bit more backstory. Moving right along, they had Assassin's Creed Jade, which is, they believe, is the feudal Japan-based Assassin's Creed game, but the kicker was I think it's coming on mobile, which I thought was kind of a little bit of a letdown. Like people have been wanting to play a ninja in Assassin's Creed for quite some time, and the fact that it's just going to be on mobile, which is a totally viable place to play video games. But I would have wanted to see it on console, and maybe it will come to PC and mobile or something like that. But I just thought that was a little disappointing. I think people would wanted like to live in it and experience it with a controller for some time, and so the fact that I think it's coming on mobile would be a little bit of a letdown. But maybe I'm all wrong and messed it all up and didn't quite understand it. So let me know if I'm getting it wrong down below in the comments. Got to see a little bit more of Assassin's Creed Mirage. The ghost powers look definitely weird. I think we'd kind of seen a glimpse of those because we've been seeing more Mirage stuff over the past couple weeks. But you definitely can like ghost teleport to people and like kill them, and you have a certain number of points that you can use to kind of run down the line, and then but it's all still like one hit kill assassinations, which is what people have been wanting from an Assassin's Creed game for quite some time, as they've been kind of building in the RPG elements. You can't you haven't been able to one-shot bosses or one-shot people in a while, so I know that a lot of people are looking forward to that. The ghost power stuff felt a little Shadow of Mordor, but that's kind of full circle considering Shadow of Mordor was very much a fantasy Lord of the Rings take on Assassin's Creed, so it's come full circle, but the ghost powers looked really cool, felt very Shadow of Mordor to me. Let me know if you felt the same. And last but not least, and something that was talked about in both the Xbox showcase, but got a little bit more detail in the Ubisoft Forward, was the next Star Wars game, Star Wars Outlaws. This still seems like it's in the core trilogy. I forget what the timeline is. I don't know if this is like Mandalorian, post, central, I don't know what you call 4, 5, and 6 trilogy, main trilogy, or if we're like somewhere in like in between 4 and 5. I don't know where we are in the time with this Outlaws part, but we get to see the next Star Wars game. You play as an outlaw, and you're trying to like full open world. I think they said open world Star Wars, so you'll be able to run around and explore, which is something we haven't been able to do in the Star Wars world. The Jedi games from EA have been very kind of linear, semi-open, but this seems like this one's going to be the full open world experience that we want from Star Wars. So and you'll make friends and enemies, and it'll all come together. So but that was in both the Xbox showcase as well as a deeper dive in the Ubisoft Forward. But there was a bunch of other games talked about too, but those are the ones that kind of caught my eye. So looking forward to open world Star Wars, as I think a lot of people are. Let me know if there was any Ubisoft games that I didn't talk about. Capcom was also able to fit their showcase down to like 30 minutes. They only talked about 4 or 5 games. The biggest of which was, or at least ones that caught my eye, was Pragmata, and that one kind of caught my eye, and I got there was a lot more coverage of it, I believe because it got delayed. I think that was the big announcement coming out of the Capcom showcase, was I think it was supposed to come out this year, but it's been delayed to the end of the year, or till next year. They're taking a little bit more time, so always good. Always like to see, waiting to release a good product rather than rushing out a bad product. So glad to see that. And then again, I mean, of course, they went over Street Fighter 6 and what's coming down the line for Street Fighter 6. Didn't really catch my eye. Dragon's Dogma, looking at screenshots and stuff like that, it looked very Final Fantasy-esque. So I was like, is this, with a Final Fantasy, with a fantasy version of Final Fantasy coming out very soon, is this going to scratch the same itch? So someone's going to sell me on Dragon's Dogma, because I might pick it up, but I'm also probably going to pick up Final Fantasy 16 eventually, maybe not right when it launches, but felt very much in the same vein. So if I'm completely wrong on that, please tell me. And that was most of Capcom. There was like a Ghost Detective game and Ace Attorney, but those two were kind of the ones that caught my eye from that. And it was short and sweet, so I didn't have to spend too much time on that. Going way back, the Future Game Show was presented by Laura Bailey and Yuri Lowenthal, 2 prominent voice actors in gaming, so always glad to see them. And the Future Game Show typically gets, I think Laura Bailey's been at the last couple, and I think last year, I don't know if it was Troy Baker or Nolan North, always presenting them, but there was a lot of games that caught my eye, so glad to see both of them, and a lot of games that caught my eye, so let's jump right in. There was one called Unguard, Kind of looked like a third-person action RPG. Squashbuckling. You were kind of using it very much as the name suggested. You were like using a rapier and defending yourself from other pirates and stuff. So it looked really fun and kind of that old Assassin's Creed Batman Arkham kind of combat system. So it's all parries and stuff like that. So that one caught my eye. Another one called Bookwalker Thief of Tales. It looked like looked pretty cool. Definitely passed a lot of vibe checks. The main character looks like a book like opened up, like their hair is like the spine, their face is like the spine of a book, and their head is like a book opening up, and you like jump into different books. A lot of really cool vibes with the game. It was, I think when we saw gameplay, it was an isometric game, isometric RPG-esque with turn-based strategy. So that's how the combat was going to work. Strategy, combat. So all of those checking all the boxes I like. I like isometric. I like the kind of book vibes of the game. Like the RPG aspect. So yeah, that all looked really cool. And I like my turn-based strategy. So looking forward to that. Homeseek. This was a post-apocalyptic city builder. It definitely looks like you're like going out fetching scrap and building up a city and trying to make a go at it in this kind of post-apocalyptic desert. Like I said, city builders have kind of been on my mind and something I really enjoy lately. So looking forward to Homeseek as well. Add that to your wish list. Enchanted Portals is one that almost slipped through the cracks. I didn't see it on a lot of people's lists, but very Cuphead-esque co-op shooter. Hopefully it's got an easy mode so that I can play it with my wife. But yeah, it very much felt like kind of a old school animation, run around, dual gun shooting, 2D, boss fights, very timing based co-op shooter. So that one looked fun. Hopefully it's coming to Switch. I didn't see which platforms it's coming to, but something I and whoever else could probably enjoy with a significant other, depending on how easy it is, which was always a criticism of Cuphead being pretty hard. And that's why me and my wife did not play through the entire game. But I digress, moving right along. Always happy to see Pacific Drive. This game we've seen several times over the past year or so, where you're kind of in like a wagon and you're working your way through kind of this exclusion zone and trying to figure out what's going on with this kind of weird phenomenon that's going on. So first person driving game, you stop at truck stops and fix up your wagon and keep going. So I think the game looks really cool, and I'm very curious to see what it is and when I can get my hands on it. And then always happy to see Stray Gods, the kind of musical RPG game coming out in August. So happy to see that whenever it gets presented. I'm looking forward to playing it. And that's it for most of the showcases. So there was obviously a ton covered in the 10 hours of showcases this week. So if there's anything that you feel I forgot, feel free to leave a comment down below. Moving on to non-showcase related news. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, has filed an injunction against Microsoft's buyout of Activision Blizzard King. But I think this was supposed to be a good thing. I don't quite know how the mechanics of it all work. But Microsoft is going to present its case. Activision Blizzard also going to be involved. Bobby Kotick already commented on it. They're going to present their case to a federal court. And then I believe if they succeed in their case, or however success is determined, they will then be able to go forward with the full buyout. I know that the timeline is getting shorter and shorter. I think they had like a year and a half to kind of get through everything they needed to get through. So this is potentially supposed to expedite the process, and maybe they don't have to worry about the UK or China blocking the deal and can just kind of work through it. But apparently this is a good thing. At least I think Microsoft and Bobby Kotick are all smiling about it. So, eventually this might actually go through before it gets cut off and dies. So I guess that's a good thing, but let me know if I'm reading into that wrong. Going back and talking about Starfield, if I haven't already gushed over it enough, they announced their collector's edition during the Starfield showcase. First thing you get is 5 days of early access. So I think something that I've been talking about with people in the industry and my friends is just early access is so cheap and something easy. And even thinking about it a little bit more, it gets the servers aren't as stressed because it's not one big moment. There's kind of two smaller booms, so you can kind of fix all the problems. Hopefully not for your high-paying customers. You don't, they're not like guinea pigging their way through it. Although you're paying premium prices, that would feel bad if it like didn't work on launch day. But I think there's a lot of good reasons that most big AAA games should probably just sell you early access to kind of make up some of that price as games get more and more expensive. But the other big thing that's going to be in their collector's edition, the Starfield collector's edition, is you'll get a watch. Very, very kind of that very kind of 60s NASA feel to the watch. You will, it has an app where you can kind of sync in, you can get notifications to it. And this kind of reminded me of and I think a lot of people on the internet kind of reminded them of the Fallout 4 Pip-Boy Collector's Edition. Obviously not going to be a big old thing sticking on your wrist. It might be just a little bit bigger than like an Apple Watch, but it'll be able to connect to an app, and you'll be able to potentially interact with the game. So I thought that all kind of looked cool. I don't remember what the price was for the Collector's Edition. Maybe $300, which would mean that like $200 of that is the watch, which would feel a little expensive. As someone who smartwatches, are very expensive nowadays. So maybe $200 is about right. But and having something practical that you get in a collector's edition is a lot better than all the plastic that sits up there and just kind of looks cool on a shelf. So I'm looking forward to potentially picking that up if it doesn't sell out already. Moving right along, the Final Fantasy 16 has got a demo running this week, and the big thing that most people don't want to play single-player game demos, and the big thing about this demo is that your saves will continue. So, you can play it this weekend, put a couple hours in, and then you won't lose that progress when the game comes out later this month, or in a week, 2 weeks, in a week, 10 days, something like that. You can play Final Fantasy 16 this weekend, and all that progress you make will be saved when you jump into the full game in just a few short days. So check that out. I'll have a link down below. A game that wasn't, again, City Builder, game that wasn't talked about, I don't think during any of the showcases, but I wanted to highlight because I saw something about it this week. A game called Gourd, and I think I talked about this a couple months ago. It's kind of a dark fantasy city builder. Again, you'll hear me say that a bunch of times. Very excited for more city builders. But this one's very kind of dark fantasy. So people who kind of enjoyed the grim darkness of like the latest Diablo game or kind of Witcher, I think it kind of fits in that vibe. You've got your kind of your palisade, kind of small village. You're building up little huts and building them up and making them bigger to develop adventurers, and they go out and fight like these weird monstrosities. Very much kind of Witcher feel. I think it kind of elicits the same grim dark of Diablo, maybe not demons and stuff running around, but really gross stuff. Very kind of Northern European vibe to it as well. Just another game I wanted to call out this week. And last but certainly not least, Dead Cells, one of 2020's best games, in my humble opinion. And one of the best Metroidvanias to come out probably the last decade or so. It's getting its own TV show. I'm surprised this isn't coming out on like Netflix because of the colors and how successful the game was and how thirsty Hollywood is for kind of gaming IPs to turn into content, for their streaming services. But it sounds like they're self-producing it or working. The Dead Cells developers are working with a French studio to develop 10-minute episodes. I don't remember how many episodes are going to actually be in the show, but they're only going to be about 10 minutes or so each. I'm surprised it's not being purchased by kind of a bigger studio. Maybe this is kind of a pilot program, then it'll get picked up and maybe expanded into a Amazon or Netflix. I definitely think this sounds like a Netflix thing, especially in the vein of like Arcane or Castlevania. So very curious what they do, but they had a really cool trailer, so I'll have a link down below. You can check out that like 1 minute teaser for it, and I'd be happy to watch those. I enjoyed my time with Dead Cells, and so seeing it in a different kind of transmedia would be pretty cool. So excited to see that. Whew, Whew, that is it for this week. There was quite a lot to cover. Let me know if if there's any E3 games that you thought I should keep my eye on. Happy to wish list anything that you suggest to me, so feel free to leave those down below in the comments. But as always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you do, please follow, like, and subscribe to me on YouTube and Twitch so you can see more great content like this. I'll have links down below in the description. Thanks again. I hope you have a super day. I hope you have a super weekend. And I hope you have a super day. Bye!